Hey, welcome back. In this video, we will learn about the CSS inheritance. So, let's get started. Basically, I will remove everything from the style sheet, and inside of our HTML, let's wrap everything in a div, this paragraph basically. Okay, cut and then paste it out here. All right, and then do the same thing, div, and then what we can do something like this. All right, so we have the h1, and after that we have a div, and inside of the div we have paragraphs. Here the same thing, div, inside of the div we have the paragraph. All right, so in this video we will learn about the CSS inheritance. What does that do? To do that, I can demonstrate that quite easily here. And also here inside of this h1, let's do a span. I want to show you something. Span and cut this course text and just paste it out here. So let's get started. Now let's do some styling for the h1. H1, and then do the color and do something like blue violet, something like this, and save. Now if I go to the browser, please see what happens. So go to the browser. Yep. So as you can see, this CSS course text, this h1 basically is in the blue violet color, which is good. But if you remember, inside of this h1 we have this span element, right? And this span element is also in that particular color. It is not black, right? So what happened is that the h1 is the parent element, and inside of that the span element is the children, and the color property of CSS is getting passed to the span element as well. And now if I go here, and as you can see inside of this, I have selected the span, and here inside of the dev tools it is saying inherited from h1, like, hey, this is getting inherited from h1. Okay, so what that indicates, this indicates like, hey, the parent of the span has a CSS property, and that CSS property is applied to the span as well. As simple as that. This is what the CSS inheritance is basically. So if I go to the code editor once again, and let's do the div as well, div, and let's do something like color, right? And do something like purple. Yeah, why not? Okay, now if I do that as well, before doing so, let me just remind you, like, we have the div, and inside of the div we have the paragraph, right? So if I go to the browser, as you can see, our paragraphs are colored, right? And now if I just expand that, and this p, if I just select this paragraph element here, as you can see, inherited from the div, which is the color. So there are certain properties in CSS which can be inherited from the parent to the child. But there are some other properties which cannot be inherited from the parent and the child. And now the question is, which properties are those, right? So you can go to MDN, right? You can go to MDN and it has the CSS properties. Now we are checking the documentation for the color. And if I go below, and here formal definition is there, and here is the inherited, which is yes. This can be no for certain properties, and one of them is CSS borders. So this is the documentation for the border. So let's try out that, right? So if I just go to the code editor, and here what we can do, we haven't learned about the borders yet, but let's just do that. Just write out, and we will definitely learn about the borders in the upcoming videos. So border, which can be 1 pixel. I want a 1 pixel border, solid and red. Okay, so yeah, this is a pretty common line for debugging purposes. We use that so that we can check which element is taking up the width or so on and so forth. Okay, all right. We will definitely check that in the upcoming videos. So if I go to the browser, and here, as you can see, the div has only the border, but the paragraphs do not have the border, right? And this one is like not active currently right now, and I cannot check or uncheck something like that. Okay, so inside of this documentation, formal definition, inherited, no, this is not inherited, but we can change the inherited, like this property, right? We can change and we can force inheritance to the paragraph elements as well. How we can do that, let's check out. So if I go to the code editor once again, and let's have the paragraph and do border and do inherit. Okay, so save. And now if I go to the browser and go to this one, now the paragraphs have the border as well, and which is inherited from the divs, like the wrapping divs of the paragraphs. So we can change the inheritance behavior inside of the browser as well. But once again, we don't want to do this particular thing quite often, like unless or until you have a proper reason to do that, because there is a reason why some CSS properties have inheritance and some don't have inheritance. So yeah, all right, so this is inheritance in CSS.